Well, the court, they say, is the hope of the common man. And of course, there's no way we can talk about the 2023 elections without looking at some of the litigation that trails the outcome of the election. I've been having a fantastic time with my guests that I'll be introducing in a short while. Well, from my immediate left is Barrister Tim Yobosa Igbejume. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and of course, sitting close to him is Tinosa Igebo. He's a grassroots politician and a businessman.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. Yes.
And sitting very close to him is one gentle clergyman. He's a legal practitioner too, and of course, a perfect analyst. He's in person of Barrister Israel Adodo. Glad to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, from my extreme left is the president of Noxen here in Benin City, joining us on ITV on the show. Is a person of Comrade Obidi Emmanuel. Glad to have you join us.
Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
Okay, let me just start with Barrister Tim. Since 1999, our electoral process has been trailed with an outcome of going to court. It's like there's no way we don't go to court after an election since independence. How did we get here?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, election itself is not a complete cycle of election. Election itself is a process that culminates with going to court. But your question is that why is it that every successful election in this country will always go to court? The reason is that we are not perfect in our elections. Let me say from 1993 that I know that I started voting as a person. The 1993 election was perfectly okay, even though the outcome of the election all of us know, and although it has gone into history. But come to 1999, we just entered into democracy. We will accept or exempt INEC at that material time because we know for a very long time we've not actually, we just left the in quotes, the military rule into democratic system. But they conducted election, and if you ask me now today, I will tell you that 1993 election, 1999 election is still one of the best elections that we have ever had since the current dispensation. Because you see, politicians, if politicians play the game according to the rule, nobody will go to court. For instance, in 2015 election, Goodluck Jonathan did not go to court. He accepted defeat because even as a sitting president, he accepted defeat because he conducted the election. As a sitting president, he accepted that yes, the election he conducted, he cannot go ahead to say fought that same election. So that is the reason he did not go to court. But after that 2015 election, I will tell you, we'll be moving from bad to worst elections. Compared to this, that is my opinion anyway.
Of course, it's your opinion.
2023 election is the worst election I've ever experienced since I was born.
Okay.
So since 1993 that I started participating in an election. 2023 election is the worst election that we have. Because, for instance, look at the new electoral act. We thought with the coming of this new electoral act and with the litmus test of the new electoral act in Edo election, the standard election, Osho, Ekiti, and Anambra, we saw it. It was a bit okay. It was even Edo state election. When they went to when APC went to court, they never went to court to challenge the election. They only went to court to challenge Obasanjo's credential. That is to say, to some extent, that election was a bit acceptable by the people.
Okay.
Yeah, but now, 2023 election, to be fair, and to my opinion, is the worst election I have ever.
Okay, I'll take that as your submission on the first round. On the first round.
It's my
okay,
submission.
let's come to Tinosa. He just opted that the election didn't go well. In your opinion, what were the wrongs in the elections?
Well, there's no way elections will happen in Nigeria when you know that most of the time people attribute the failures of elections to politicians, ignoring and maybe overlooking the participation of other components within the electoral system, from the INEC to the police to the participants themselves. Because most of the time the voters can be quite difficult at the polling units. They can create unrest, they can create problems that may end up leading to elections being cancelled or violence erupting and things like that. All due respect to my brother, there's never a time when you expect anybody to do anything in Nigeria outside politics that you expect a pinpoint perfect logical thinking and understanding around it. It's said that people are emotionally, intelligence is low, and their emotion gets the best of them in addressing some of the things that they feel would have made a process not work properly, or they just hammer on the same story of not looking at the key performance indicators of a direction. Moving from the manual voting system to an electronic system, running an election within a state platform like Osun and Ekiti is an isolated situation. Now you're talking about the entire Nigeria. And this process is to be driven by people who are even in the civil service. And as far as you can agree with me, there are a lot of things that goes on the ground within the space, even when you vote sometimes, and the result of the unit is counted and collated nicely, and the result, everybody's satisfied with the agents. By the time the result is taken to the ward collation, to the AG and state collation centers, a lot of, hulu balu happens within the space. So I can understand why he says the election is probably worse. It's his opinion. For me, I think it's a work in progress. I think the election was fair because of the fact that it's an electronic process whereby if he wants to go to court and challenge it, which is not what I stand for, you might be able to have electronic evidence to compare notes. I'll take, for instance, like the elections that happened in the Senate in Edo South. The candidate of my party, APC, was made to come out as third, who scored the least votes. But we went to the tribunal, which is a process that is ongoing. The tribunal gave a court order to inspect the materials. So far, so good. Over 2,000 plus votes, if not slightly lesser than that, have been actualized within just 4 wards. So it shows to you that it may not be the electoral process that is bad. It may be the people that manages the process. You can apply the same thing to governance and the contributions of the civil servants and even people you deal with in the market. Take, for instance, the other day, there were issue of credit cash crunch, there were issue of fuel hoarding. The people jumped on the bandwagon to start to extort other people. That character in us is what I think would make anybody describe the electoral process as being bad. However, because of the movements and the people getting tired of governance and government that has not given them, or the feeling has not given them the dividends of democracy, we must understand where we are coming from. In those days, from 1999, which he accredited as a very good election, I think it was, because it was the first time I'm moving from military rule to civilian rule. But if you go from the same people who were in government to 2003, the whole ball game changed. There were a lot of violence, there were ballot box snatching, and that is, over the past 15 to 20 years of democracy, that is the aspect that the current government is trying within the Electoral Act reform. They are trying to chart a new direction. So you will need some time for such processes to get better, because whenever you do anything and you have areas where you have errors, you go back and work on those errors. Initially, there were the use of codes in Osun, where in areas where people were more popular, people aided them to use codes to overvote, whereby you can accredit 200, but the vote you bring from there is 800. By the time you compare the beavers data to the actual result, you will see that there was massive rigging, huge disparity. So for many people who were obedient, for instance, who felt like they needed a complete change, they will tell you that the election was rigged. For people in PDP who felt like maybe certain area was not right, they will also have their complaints. Likewise, those in APC. I don't think there's ever a time when election will happen that at this stage where we ask people who have not find a place to determine where we really want to go, that we can easily just make amends and do things 100% right.
All right, let's quickly come to Israel Adodo. In 2007, we saw a sitting president admit that an election that brought him to office wasn't free and fair. And INEC has actually admitted that to an extent there are hitches in the election. Don't you think someone should be held responsible, though the case is in court now?
Well, and thank you for that question. From time to time, we keep seeing that these particular issues keep reoccurring. You get it? It is already known. It's not something that should be argued. Elections in Nigeria for a very long time has never been free and fair. So even the court are aware So what the court tried to look at is whether there was substantial compliance. You understand? If we are alleging that the election was not free and fair, but let's look how we can make something out of it. Because when you look at the finance, the funding that is involved in the electoral process, you have to be smart, not just to nullify elections, but to see how you can remedy it. So that's what the court have been doing from time to time. But from what we have seen in 2023, I'm not sure it's something that can be remedied.
You think so?
Yes, the robbery was too obvious. The impunity with which these things were done was like nothing will happen and nothing will come out of it. It's a time. That's why we will tell those that are in the judiciary that this election or what is before the court is the judiciary on trial. Because it is a time to get it right. If we don't get it right now, this political rascality will continue. So it's not something we try to salvage. You know, before now we look at it, okay, they were voting, they were this, and why not just manage what we have and make something out of it? But at this point, it can't work. We can't keep... Now, I understand it is a fact that we are improving. But the improvement is one step forward and many steps backward. And this cannot work like that. If in some state election, this beef has worked, certain things worked, and youths in hope that if you work in this state, it will work in the national election or in the presidential election, and now we are going back to say PVAS did not work, and you cannot prove substantially that it did not work because of the error, not just because of it, but because for some reasons, some persons refused to release the password that we allow these things to be uploaded. So these are issues that we cannot afford to sweep under the rug. It must be dealt with the court, it must be dealt with by the court, and all eyes are in the court at this particular stage. And I believe the court will do the needful. Okay,
good Emmanuel, to an extent, some Nigerian feels that the outcome of the just concluded election actually dashed their hope. And if you want to now look at it critically, in the governorship and State House of Assembly election, we saw voter apathy. Do you think in future election we are going to see a decline in turnouts of voters?
Well, thank you very much. The fact still remains that a lot happened in last elections, and this can be well attributed to both the electoral umpire on one hand and the stakeholders, the political players on the other hand. The truth still remains that the hope of Nigerians to see a better electoral process, the expectations of Nigerians to see that the votes of the people actually reflected in the ballots and the results was actually dashed. Because the process in itself was not free, fair, and was not credible. To the extent that the electoral umpire, who were supposed to be seen holding tenaciously to the Electoral Act laws and provisions, were seen breaching their own laws in terms of electronic transmission of results. That alone is enough for Nigerians to lose confidence in the electoral system. And when that happens, it portends a great danger, one, to our democracy, two, to the involvement of young Nigerians who believe that they can enthrone government and participate in governance that can give the dividend of democracy to the people. Because a government that is not enthroned by the people cannot be answerable to the people. If a government that is adjudged to be popular and mandate being given to them by the people lacks the confidence to date to remove subsidy, is it a government that is installed by a very shoddy process that can remove subsidy or give better governance to Nigerians? What am I trying to say? It will take a work, a great work, a great mobilization from various constituencies to encourage Nigerians and convince them that there is need for them to continue to participate in the election process. Because I will tell you, what does the political class or some politicians actually want is to discredit the electoral process and discourage Nigerians, because the involvement of Nigerians in our electoral process will reduce all of these shenanigans and all of these malpractices that you see in elections. When the people begin to improve in their level of political consciousness and involvement, it portends, or it has a way of giving caution.
Okay.
And making politicians to sit up, there's no longer business as usual. Okay. But when you throw all of this improvement from the side of the people away by conducting a very poor election, irrespective of the amount that is voted, then you are trying to push the people back from participatory governance and in their involvement, so that the political class can continue to have their way. So if you ask me in a nutshell, I would say it is a trick from the political class to push back the involvement and the participation of Nigerians from electoral process, so that they will continue to have their way. Okay. Then I will say that the people must be resolute at this time, before, during, and after election, to ensure that justice prevails. Whatever is not wrong should be made right, so that the people and justice will stand in the line. Okay, now
from your submission, gentlemen, to an extent, it seems there are hitches in the electoral process or in the just concluded election. Barrister Tim, what are the chances of the rival side in court?
That is a big question.
What are the chances?
That is a big question. You see, let me tell you, the political class, the politicians, let me say, they try to make sure they put the judiciary in their hand, so that they use them whenever they want to. For instance, there are a lot of judgments that have emanated from Supreme Court in a recent time that have not been accepted by the people. If you look at the logic and the rationale behind such judgment, although the layman on the street will say, why? For instance, the Electoral Act has said, if you participate in one primary, that you are not entitled, or you have the chance of coming back to participate in another primary, whether presidential or whatever, once you are, the Electoral Act specifically provide for that. But what did we see in the current Senate President case in Yobe and Akpabio's case in Akwa Ibom? The Supreme Court came back, and although we as lawyers, when we read the judgment, we see the logic in it, but the layman on the street will say, no, this thing is not right. Let me be say, I won't criticize the judgment on air, but on the long run, we know what happened. So Nigerians. So
what are the chances of the rival groups?
Nigerians don't have confidence in the judiciary anymore. That is the truth. They don't have confidence in the judiciary anymore, because since the removal of Onoe through the back door, since then the Supreme Court, there are some controversial judgments that have emanated from Supreme Court. So since then, the public don't have confidence in them. But well, the fact is that it's your evidence before court. That is what the court evaluates. If the rival, those who are claiming that they won the election, or the election was marred with a lot of irregularities, or whether the election should be cancelled, like my brother rightly said, that they are not voted for elections. Because let me tell you, Nigerians are not interested in who rule them all, whether it's democracy or military or whatever. But Nigerians are interested in the government that will put food on their table. And Nigerians are not interested in whether the person that ruled them is a Muslim or a Christian, or from the north or from the south, or what they're looking for, a true Nigerian that can put things on the right path. But the political class has made sure they seal everything so that they will continue to manipulate Nigerians. And the way they've manipulated the judiciary, and that is the way they want to manipulate Nigerians, so that they will be in. But for me, let Nigeria be hopeful.
All right.
Let Nigeria be hopeful.
We'll come back to you. Etinosa, you want to react to what he said?
Yeah, I mean, you can. Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
You can already see somebody who is speaking with all the respect from the both sides. He would not criticize the judiciary, we'll blame the political class for whatever that goes on with the judiciary.
But I'll have to pause you at this point. Whatever they submit on this program, it's their opinion.
I know, I understand. Okay. That opinion is what people listen to out there and also build their opinion out of it. Okay. The only bits I would say, obviously, is just a conversation. Everybody's speaking on their opinion. I don't subscribe to the idea of Nigerians not bothered if the military is ruling them. We bother if the military is ruling. That one is not what we need. Democracy is here to stay. Whether it is Muslim or Christians or Hindu or Jews or atheists, okay, fine and good. A religion shouldn't matter. But for those people who are with me on this panel, who are perceived, slightly with my brother left out, to be obedient in their conversation, I can already tell why the frustration has kicked in so deeply, because
well, you cannot authoritatively say that.
No, because you when you listen to people and they have a conversation with you, you can already tell what they've phantomed their opinion towards. If you say that Nigeria has failed completely, and at the end of the day, the government is bad, XYZ, it means that you are not in tune with what has been happening in this country, or you're economical with the truth. No matter how bad it is, the same people who are complaining that the election was not free and fair, when the particular candidate they targeted lost in Lagos State, they had no complaints about it. Okay. The complaints they had was that the vote should have been more in another man's land. Whereas we come back to Edo, where certain things happen, and I expected them to discuss on some of those things, especially with the issue of violence and politicians and political class. Okay. Election process is not just down to the politicians alone. The judiciary is an independent arm of government. You know what I'm saying? They have every powers to determine and interpret the constitution as it is. Okay. Heaven will not fall. Okay. You know, if, for example, in the case of the Senate President, the judiciary chooses to do otherwise, and they don't want to criticize them on air, I understand that. Because lawyers are trained liars, I know.
No, you can't say that.
You know,
that was out of concept now.
You know what? Do you know why we use that? Do you know why we use that?
Well, I think on their behalf, I take exception to that statement.
It may not be that they are liars
on their behalf.
Per se. Wait, it may not be that they are liars per se. It's an analogy. When I do something wrong and I tell the lawyer, I know I did it, but tell the judge you didn't do it. Wait, I'm telling you. No, let me correct. And at the end,
I think personally.
Wait a minute. To finish, let me take that back.
But you have to retrieve that statement.
I've retrieved it now, but that does not stop the fact that the judiciary is an arm of government. Okay. If they're culpable and they compromise, I expect him as a lawyer to come here and say it. You cannot just come and criticize the politicians and make them enemy of the state. Whilst you yourself has areas that you're just being biased on TV. All right. So in any event, for me, there's never a time when election processes will happen. Okay. If the PDP had won now, I'm sure that APC will be crying that the election was not fair and fair. If the obedient movement has won, I'm sure the PDP and APC will be crying.
Somebody must cry.
But what we need in this country, outside the fact that a lot of these guys supported the withholding of currency for the common man, they supported the idea that petrol prices was manipulated and the hoarding was so bad, in order for the government of the day to be hated and for the party to put their political best arsenals together and won that election, I think they should also commend the party for being able to do that and give them a chance. Okay. Give them a chance to engage in this democratic process, and let us be hopeful. You cannot just say that if the previous government cannot do this, this incoming government will fail. That is procrastination.
All right, let me quickly come to Israel Adodo. Now, if you look at it critically, to an extent, in some areas, Beavers worked for the National Assembly election. We didn't hear any kind of complaints to an extent. It worked perfectly well. But as far as the presidential result was concerned, there were so many hitches. Don't you think we should look at that critically in your submission? Do you have anything to say?
Now, this question takes us back to the question you asked earlier. What are the chances of the parties? Now, when it comes to election matters, Section 134 is clear of the Electoral Act 2022. There are 3 grounds upon which a party who is protesting the result of an election can do that. But one is on the ground of qualification. And that is what I've had the luxury and the privilege of going through the 99-page papers filed by Peter Gregory Obi of the Labour Party. Now, and I've seen that he has covered those 3 ambits as provided by the law. Now, the issue of qualification is there, and he argued on two grounds. The first argument was that the vice presidential candidate of the APC, Mr. Shettima, was not qualified to run as a vice presidential candidate on the ground that he was first before then, like my little brother was saying earlier, he has been nominated earlier for the senatorial district of Bonu Central. Now, he did not withdraw his nomination on time. After he has accepted and submitted himself to run as a vice presidential candidate a day, then the next day before he now sent his withdrawal, that already made him stand as a candidate in having two nominations. So Peter Obi has argued that on that ground, it should be disqualified. And you know it's a joint ticket. If it's disqualified, then the Mr. Asiwaju is disqualified. That's one. Now I'm trying to.
It's happened in Bayelsa.
Yes. The other argument, because it's a thick called stuff that they did. They're very thick arguments when you go through it. But don't forget, the lawyers of Tinubu is also not weak. So let's see what they will roll out. Now, the second argument he had was that Tinubu himself is disqualified on the ground that he has been fined for some offenses he committed outside the jurisdiction of Nigeria anyway. And Section 66 of the Constitution says that once a party has been fined for offenses that border on dishonesty, that such a party should not be allowed, should be disqualified. So that was the first ground. Now, coming back to your question, the other ground is on the ground of non-compliance. Non-compliance. And we have seen that this election, from the feedback we have had, we are not in total compliance with the election heart, with the electoral heart, and was not in compliance with the guidelines that were continually issued.
Okay.
I put it to you that one of the reasons youth came out in mass was because of the constant reassurance that we were getting from INEC. They were coming on air, coming everywhere, saying that this election beavers will be deployed. There is no fear. Election results will be uploaded at real time. And these were the confidence that Nigeria believed on, with which they came out to vote. Now, this was not followed. And the law is that when election process is not in compliance with the guideline, the electoral act, such election should be nullified, and therefore will not fall. Let's not talk about the money invested. We know money were invested, but now we can't keep having a system of governance which is presumed to be democracy, but at the end, the judiciary become the one that keep imposing and people and whoever becomes the leader on us. No, let the vote of the people count. Okay. So if it is believed, because compliance minimally is still not compliance at all. Okay. It must be seen to be substantial. At least if we have 37 states, in Abuja, let's not go there now, it's a for another day, 37 states. If at least out of 35 states, there was compliance, beavers worked, then you can say, well, truth states should not be the reason. You understand? But now, more than 30 states has complaints. 30 states have complaints of beavers not working. So there is substantial non-compliance, and that is alone a grant for the election to be nullified. And the last ground, which I don't want to spend too much time on, is that the person who was declared winner was not declared by virtue of, he did not have majority of the lawful vote casted. And you know, non-compliance too can also rub on that. Okay. Because now we are not sure of the number of persons that we accredited. We are not sure of the number of persons that voted. You get it. So how are we sure of the lawful votes? Okay, now you talked about assurance. Now, Ogbidi Emmanuel, the president-elect, Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu, said that he's going to be president for everyone, whether you vote for him or not. He just said that recently, one of the dailies. And of course, we've had issues where the incumbent president, who is outgoing now, said that he's for everyone and not for everybody. Do you think Nigerians should take that statement from the president-elect to the bank?
Well, very quickly, I would want to say that, you know, this discussion that we are having, I would really appreciate that every one of us speak to the issues rather than maybe attacking anyone, or maybe I think we've trashed that. We've trashed that. We've trashed that. Then we should engage on the issue so that we can have a very robust, engagement. Talk to the issue. Now, on the issue that you've just raised, you see, it is very difficult to trust some politicians in this country, and trust in itself is a veritable tool a very strong ingredients in democratic governance. When the people cannot trust their leaders, when the people cannot trust the statements that comes from those who govern them, it's a very big problem. And when leaders who say something are seen to be doing another thing, it's also a very big problem. It portends a great danger to the system. Now, if you look at before the election, the president came out, even in one of the United Nations engagement, he said he was going to conduct the most free and fair election in this country. And it was going to be a legacy to leave for Nigerians. The question today is that, having said that, was the 2023 election reflected what Mr. President said? The answer is no. Why? Because under the watch of Mr. President, we saw security breach. We saw cases where there were intelligence of rigging, intelligence of violence before election, and during the election the violence actually happened to the extent that it was almost resorting to tribal disputes in some parts in the southwest. But there were security intelligence
on ground.
There were violence even before that time. What did the chief security officer of the nation do before that time? There were cases of, as INEC we put it, what's it called? IT glitch in the transmission of results. The National Assembly election and the presidential election was conducted same day, with same BVAS machine, with same network, and same human resource persons. Why the National Assembly's elections were transmitted? You could not transmit the presidential result with the same BVAS machine. Now, what does that tell you? That beyond making statements, the will to do the right thing and the capacity, because when people sometimes begin to speak about who rules you or who governs you, you might have good intentions. What about the capacity?
Okay.
What about the ability? Then going back to what you also said. Now, what is the hope of those who have gone to court? Because politicians are very good to say, rig first and go to court. Rig, do what you want to do and go to court, because they know that when they also have some level. But let me tell you quickly that it's very appalling that the judiciary as it were today is on trial.
Okay.
And in the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land.
Okay.
This is a sanctified place that when you don't see those 7 panelists, right. 7 men.
Okay.
I'm coming, sir. Let me just drop this.
Please, quickly.
You don't see them all the time. When you see them, it is as if you have seen the heavens coming down to place judgment on those on earth. But very recently, we have seen people having the need to question judgment that is coming from the sanctified highest court of the land.
Okay.
And it is not giving us a good omen for our democracy.
Okay, I'm
so
afraid.
I want to advocate that when these parties who are in court present their evidence, because judgment is based on evidence before the court and all of these things, that the court should find the courage, should find the will to give the right judgment that will bring peace.
Okay, Comrade Ogbede, sorry, I'm going to pause you. Let me quickly come to Tim, because we'll be wrapping up in a jiffy from now. Section 36 of the Constitution talk about the right to fair hearing. And the NBA chair has actually hinted that these proceedings should be aired. Do you subscribe to that?
the MB national chairman.
Yes.
Of course. Well, I don't want to discuss the issue of national chairman because some of us who are legal practitioners in Nigeria, they made some certain comment and statement that we are saying no, that is not right, because he went maybe on a visit to the INEC chairman. He said the MBA is going to offer their services pro bono to INEC. That is pro bono, free of charge for INEC. I say, and this same INEC has also said they budgeted about 3 billion naira to defend the Schengen election that they conducted. But yes, fair hearing is fundamental when it comes to judicial process. Without fair hearing, there is no way the court can actually deliver their judgment.
Okay.
But the participants in any case are allowed, because it's the grant. It's one of the fundamentals for any court of competent jurisdiction to adjudicate on any matter. You must give fair hearing to the participant. You must give fair hearing to the litigants. That is on one part. But let me quickly correct one impression that my brother here thinks that I was saying. I'm not advocating for military rule.
I thought you've trashed that.
No, he was trying to say, I am not, no, he said something. I'm not advocating for military rule.
Okay.
What I am only saying is that Nigerians, like the famous Awolowo quote said, the best of military rule is the best of the worst of democracies is better than the best of military rule. Okay. So, but what I'm saying is that Nigerians at this point, they are looking for the persons that will put food on their table. All right. That will make things work well. That is what Nigerians are looking for. Okay, now
let's quickly manage the few time I have. We have less than 60 seconds to wrap up this program. Just yesterday, Dr. Peter Ifunanya of the DSS hinted that some political actors are trying to install an interim government. Atinosa, quickly, 10-20 seconds. Do you think...
You're giving me 10-20 seconds?
We're wrapping up now. We've all had fair share of the show. Quickly, what do you think? Is that what we need at this point? Should there be an interim government where proceedings are already in place to ensure that a peaceful transition is being carried out? Atinosa.
Well, people will always deviate from questions that you ask, and at the same time, they can throw light to attacks when you speak on issues.
We are wrapping up now,
but
please.
At the end of the day, it's obviously clear that, like I said before, incidents happens in Edo. You're in Edo. You're not speaking on Edo. You're speaking on the Southwest. However, on the issue of the DSS, I think what they've just said is probably just to put out some sort of a warning to say that maybe XYZ will be happening. I don't think that if people were holding such meetings, is a good thing. For the DSS to establish that they already are aware of such plan to distort an election that I think is fair. I don't see anything wrong with that election. Okay. It is always that way. I think that people shouldn't be looking at that direction. They've gone to court. Let the court decide. Whatever the court says, fine.
Okay, Barrister Israel. What says you? Let's quickly wrap it up.
I don't know why DSS is doing what they are doing, but I think they know what they are doing. You see, conspiracy is an offense in Nigeria. It's a criminal offense. It's actionable. You don't need to take steps before you are apprehended. If the DSS are aware, they are secret police. If they are aware, they should not come to telling media. I don't know. Let them go and do their job. Okay. Coming to hitch up the politics that there is no provision for interim government in Nigeria. So let them go and do their job.
Okay, they've actually said that they actually have people. And of course, the APC and PDP have said, go ahead and make arrest.
And that's what they should do, not to come and they are hitting up the politics. Okay. And I'm sure these things are political strategy. They know what they are doing. Maybe they are some things. No, I'm going so well.
You have the floor. Barrister Israel has the floor. Quickly.
The point is, if the DSS have a hint, the way it is doing in advanced country, you take action. Let's see what you are doing.
Okay. Ogwede Emmanuel.
Yes. just to quickly add to what my brother has said. You see, the provision for interim national government in Nigeria is on several grounds. One, when you have a situation of maybe chaos and all of that, and it is only the president and the National Assembly that has the power jointly on a case of to declare state of emergency, and then you have interim government. Now, is the DSS telling us that the president and the National Assembly are in conspiratory agreement to come up with a national, international government, that is not a news for Nigeria. Okay. If that is what you have discovered, and the only two arms that can bring up about declare state of emergency and bring about interim national government is to do a memo to presidency and to do a memo to a national assembly that if this anyway is cooking from their their angle, that they should stem it.
Thank you.
So we are not going to be surprised because if a president who said yesterday that is going to conduct a free and fair election could not conduct it, and now he said he's going to hand over, and now nobody has any cause to trust.
I'm sorry, I need to put you on hold. Quickly, 10 seconds, please. I'm wrapping up now. Okay. Yes, the DSS statement. What's your take?
The DSS statement is really they are trying to hit up the politics because you are a security agent. You said something is happening. You don't need to tell the world. What you need to do is just go
do your investigation. Take action.
Take action.
Okay.
Arrest whoever you want.
All right, do your investigation.
Coming to
take action.
Press to start telling us this is another way of
Thank you, gentlemen. Ogbede Emmanuel.
Ogbede
Emmanuel, thank you so much for coming. Israel Adodo, so glad to have you. Etinosa Igebo, it's always a pleasure having you. And of course, Barrister Team. Thank you so much for taking time. Well, this is where we'll be calling it a nip on the show. And of course, we'll not fail to extend our hearts to the family of Bishop Osazoa Egwavo for remembering their father 1 year in mind. I am Daniel Praise Osadebame. Thank you so much on behalf of the entire crew members. Do have yourself a beautiful Thursday morning ahead. Bye for now.